Talib, thank you very much. I want to pursue the very interesting conversation that we began about the Foreign Emoluments Clause. And again, I'm just delighted that after 7 years, several Republicans now are actually taking an active interest in the Foreign Emoluments Clause as a part of their investigation into the potential impeachment of Joe Biden, which we've been working on for a year. Let's start with this. When Donald Trump took office, he refused to divest himself of any of his more than 500 businesses, and he refused to put any of his more than 500 businesses in a blind trust. He said he would continue to be the owner of those businesses, but he would transfer some of the day-to-day management to his sons. If anybody wants to contradict me on that, I will stand to be corrected. But that was what Donald Trump said. When he was told by George W. Bush's ethics advisor that he was putting himself in extremely dangerous territory unless he stated that he was going to refuse to accept any money in the future from foreign governments, he ignored and defied the advice of all the ethics advisors for Republican administrations, for Democratic administrations. I want you to recognize the radically unprecedented nature of what he did at that point. And he set himself up for the trouble he got into. Now,
the gentleman yield?
I will. As soon as I make these points, I'll come right to you. Number two, Trump, my good friend makes it sound like Donald Trump was totally innocent. He was a businessman, and he didn't know any of this was going to happen with these foreign governments. Really? Read the report in detail, my friend. For example, go to page 69. Here's a quote from Donald Trump as he was campaigning. "I love the Saudis. Many are in this building. Saudi Arabia, I get along great with all of them. They buy apartments for me. They spend $40 million, $50 million. Am I supposed to dislike them? I like them very much." We can find quotes just like that about the Chinese government. This is your guy. Now, the governments knew exactly what they were buying at the exact same time. For example, take ICBC. And by the way, the vast majority of businesses were not paying before as tenants. That's not right. They were patronizing the hotels in Washington and New York. They were going to the golf clubs and so on. A handful of them were pre-existing tenants. That in itself is unconstitutional and illegal. You want to be president of the United States? Then you get out of that. You divest, which is what other presidents have done. Look at what Kennedy said. Look what Obama did. Look what Abraham Lincoln did. Every president before Trump scrupulously followed the Foreign Emoluments Clause. Go to page 10. There's a corrupt Chinese-owned bank called ICBC, one of Trump's tenants, and the Department of Justice recommended sanctions against them for funneling money and services to North Korea, and Donald Trump reversed them because, as he was saying, he collected money from some of these people, like Saudi Arabia. He knew who he was collecting money from. Of course, Donald Trump knew that. He's a businessman. Is there anybody who would dare to challenge that idea? Here's the former Republican chairman, Ed Royce of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, who called on Trump to apply maximum financial and diplomatic pressure by targeting Chinese banks that do business with North Korea like ICBC, and Donald Trump let them off scot-free, just like he did with Saudi Arabia after the homicidal crown prince ordered the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi. They covered up for him. He said, "We saved his blank. We saved his blank, and he owes us now." And of course, as soon as the administration ended, his son-in-law created a business and brought back, what do you know, $2 billion from Saudi Arabia, even though the Sovereign Wealth National Investment Fund said it was a terrible idea, overruled by the Crown Prince, whose blank was saved by Donald Trump. So our founders would be offended that we even have to get into the specifics of what was done, because they said categorically nobody can take a dollar from a foreign government. Do you understand that? No payment, quote, of any kind, whatever. So we don't have to have this ridiculous, humiliating debate about how far one of our presidents abased himself to line his own pockets.
Would the gentleman yield?
Sure, I would love to yield.
So my thought process here is I understand that the president lost money during his tenure.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he went bankrupt 5 times. It doesn't surprise me if that's true, but I doubt it because I think they made more money that year than they had in the several prior years before he became president.
Well, he dropped out of the top 100, so I can tell you.
Well, yeah, because they started finally checking the records. You know that your guy cooks the books a little bit. But in any event, Donald Trump
cooks the books with the rules that Congress predated made the rules for.
He was just been
Are we
punished
ready to
by
vote
the
on the
state of New
amendment?
York.
Are we ready to vote on the amendment? All right. All those in favor of the Goldman amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Recorded
The amendment
vote, please.
Not agreed to. A recorded vote is ordered. As previously announced, further proceedings on the question will be postponed. All right. Now,
Where's my
I understand. Mr. Raskin, you have an amendment at the desk?
I do. Let me find that.
The clerk will distribute the amendment to all members. Does everyone have the Raskin amendment? Does everyone have it?
And she's not going to read it.
Okay. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute as offered by Mr. Raskin of Maryland.
Without objection. The amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Since we haven't read the amendment, I'm just going to work through the basic terms of it. Resolved that the initial deadline for Hunter Biden to comply with the subpoena issued on November 8th was December 13th, 2023. Resolved that current members of Congress and 3 members of this committee have refused to comply with subpoenas duly issued under the authority of the United States House of Representatives, including Mr. Biggs of Arizona, Mr. Jordan of Ohio, and Mr. Perry of Pennsylvania. Resolved that the aforementioned members of Congress have firsthand knowledge and information related to the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol and on this body and on the Vice President of the United States that is of critical importance for the American people and the work of this committee. That the deadline for Hunter Biden to comply with the November 8th subpoena be changed to the date upon which the aforementioned members of Congress supply their knowledge and information to the Committee on Oversight and Accountability. In other words, Hunter Biden has until the date upon which our own members comply with the subpoenas that were issued in the last Congress that have still not been supplied, and that the aforementioned members of Congress shall be ineligible to vote on matters pertaining to contempt of Congress considered by this committee until the date upon which the aforementioned members of Congress supply this knowledge and information to the Committee on Oversight and Accountability. In other words, you should not be standing in judgment on contempt of other people who allegedly have violated their subpoenas when you have violated a subpoena and have not complied with the orders of the U.S. House of Representatives. I would also like to raise a problem that struck me as I was looking through the paperwork on this, Mr. Chairman, which is that the subpoena that was sent to Mr. Biden, which came around a week before, or a couple months before, it was issued on November 8th, 2023, was issued before the House of Representatives had voted on impeachment. I remember there were numerous Republican members who were very hesitant about voting for it because of the testimony of the majority's own witnesses who said there was nothing closely approximating a quantum of evidence that would justify impeachment. And so there had been no vote on it, you'll recall. And on November 8th, the subpoena was issued. The subpoena date for appearance was on December
Mr. Gosar has a point of order. State your point.
Yeah, we're not talking about an impeachment. We're talking about impeachment inquiry. We need to be very considerate about that.
Well, exactly right. And that goes right to the point of this question I have. Thank you, Mr. Gosar. The subpoena was issued on November 8th for a subpoena date of appearance on December 13th. And that was the same date when, you'll recall, we were called to the House, and then there was a vote on impeachment. So the underlying subpoena here is at least arguably invalid for the purposes of holding him in contempt of not complying with the subpoena related to impeachment. And I wonder if we could clear that up. But in any event, I would press the amendment. Certainly those members who have outstanding subpoenas from the U.S. House of Representatives, who blew off the subpoenas, should turn over what they know about the violent attack on the U.S. Capitol, the worst domestic political violence designed to overthrow an election in American history at the Capitol. And they should turn that over. And at that point, then yes, I will. We will yield in 1 second. And then Mr. Biden should also be forced to comply at that point. In the meantime, those members really should not be voting on contempt motions related to other witnesses. And somebody had a question.
I did. You yield?
Yes.
Are you sure that everybody up there actually received a subpoena? I mean, your board says certain people received a subpoena, and in my experience, some of those people up there did not receive a subpoena, and so notified counsel for your bogus J6 committee.
Well, first of all, every court in the land has rejected the claim there was anything bogus about it. As you know, the courts rejected the idea that it was somehow
Was it heard before every court in the land?
Every court that heard it, do you have any authority on your side for that outrageous proposition? I know you'd like to believe it, but your fantasies are not the law of the United States.
I have great fantasies.
I'm certain you do.
But
You
let
and
me
Ms.
just tell
Green
you
might
this.
want to discuss them together.
Yeah, but you haven't answered the question. You don't know if those people actually even received the subpoena, and yet you put it on the board, and you're going forward and trying
reclaiming
to hold
my
people in
time. Reclaiming
contempt.
my time. I served for more than a year on the bipartisan January 6th Select Committee to investigate the attack. You might not like Liz Cheney anymore, who was head of your conference, but it was bipartisan, my friends. And so was Adam Kinzinger, who served his country well. But in any event, nobody ever claimed that they hadn't gotten the subpoena. And
Go back and check the records.
Well, if
sir.
that's the argument, have them come forward and explain that. I would like them to testify under oath that they never received it.
Gentleman's
Thank
time's
you, Mr.
expired. Chair recognizes Mr. Palmer from Alabama. Chair recognizes Mr. Palmer.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we immediately dispense with the amendment for lack of germaneness.
Okay. I am prepared to rule the amendment is not germane to the bill. Therefore, the amendment is not in order.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to appeal the ruling of the chair. It's clearly germane. It goes right to the heart of what we're doing here today.
Okay. The motion to appeal